This is BBC News, I'm Gavin Gray. Our top stories. The UK's terror threat level is raised as the hunt goes on for the person who planted a bomb on a rush-hour train in London.
The Joint Terrorism Analysis Centre, that's the independent organisation which is responsible for setting the threat level on the basis of available intelligence, has now decided to raise the national threat level from severe to critical.
It's the fifth terror attack in the UK this year. The so-called Islamic State group says it planted the device which injured 29 people. In other news, North Korea's leader says his country will meet its nuclear ambitions despite sanctions after the UN strongly condemned Friday's missile test. And the Cassini space probe plunges into Saturn, ending a 13-year journey of groundbreaking discoveries. Hello. Britain is at its highest terror threat level following Friday's tube bombing in London. There will be additional patrols in busy areas and exploded at Parsons Green Station. It's thought it didn't detonate as intended. The train was heading towards central London. Our special correspondent Lucy Manning reports.
On the floor of the tube, still in flames. It was supposed to blow up the carriage.
Oh, is that bag's on fire?
Yeah.
It caused panic, fear, some injuries, but thankfully it didn't kill.
Guys, let's get away and let's move right down the end of the platform.
At 8:20, this train, packed with commuters, had just arrived at Parsons Green.
It was loud enough to make me wonder what the bang was, and I looked round and this wall of fire was just coming towards us.
I turned left and I saw the fireball surge toward my side.
Luke Walmsley was in the carriage listening to music.
A bang and then a flash to my left. And almost immediately, sort of a surge of people screaming and running towards me.
The improvised bomb was in a white bucket with wires attached in a little freezer bag. David Nelson saw it partially detonate.
Lots of school children on the way to school just noticed this flash of light over the other side of the carriage. Felt this heat wave and then just a burst of flames.
And after you saw the flames, what happened?
Panic. Everyone pushing to get off. Luckily the doors were open because we just got into the station. And then a bit chaotic, people being thrown everywhere, people being trampled.
There was people running over other people within the carriage. When I got outside the train, I was able to see people jumping off the train station towards the end of the carriage.
Passengers on the train behind were helped down the tracks. Children had their school journey interrupted in the most frightening manner. Within minutes, armed police, fire crews and ambulances arrived. It was clear there were some injuries.
Mate, no one's allowed through here, yeah?
Burns and, from the stampede after, nearly 30 taken to hospital. This woman's commute to work ending in a very different way, relieved to be safe. Peter Crowley suffered burns to his head.
There was a fireball above my head and there was a lot of people with facial burns and singed hair like myself. Worst casualty I saw, a gentleman, he had a puffer jacket that had all melted at the back.
Well, a large area around Parsons Green Tube Station has been cordoned off, and this afternoon the police announced they were evacuating local residents living closest to it to allow them to try and make that device left on the train a bit more stable.
As so-called Islamic State said it carried out this terror attack, the police hunted the would-be bomber and the terror threat level to the UK was raised.
The Joint Terrorism Analysis Centre, that's the independent organisation which is responsible for setting the threat level on the basis of available intelligence, has now decided to raise the national threat level from severe to critical. This means that their assessment is that a further attack may be imminent.
The army will now replace police officers at some locations as hundreds of detectives search for who planted this bomb.
We're making excellent progress at the moment as we pursue our lines of inquiry to identify, to locate and to arrest those responsible. This is a very complex investigation which is continuing at speed with the full weight of the London's counter-terrorism policing resources, assisted by colleagues from around the country and by our intelligence agency partners such as MI5.
We can see it at the far end of the train. I don't know what.
For those who walked out of the tube carriage today, there is, of course, relief.
Lucky. I'll go home, give my wife and kids a big cuddle tonight. I'm happy to be here.
But with a bomber on the run and fears that another attack could be imminent, these are tense times for those whose job it is to catch him. Lucy Manning, BBC News, Parsons Green.
Well, the bomb is being examined by forensic teams and officers are looking through CCTV footage for clues about who planted it. Our security correspondent Gordon Carrera reports.
The device at the heart of the investigation. The ongoing hunt for the person who planted it has now led to the UK's threat level moving up to critical, its highest level. The makeshift bomb will have yielded some clues in that hunt, like these wires coming from the bucket used to try and trigger an explosion. They look similar to these Christmas tree lights that a Birmingham man planned to use in a homemade device before he was arrested. Such improvised devices do not always go off properly. That was the case on July 21, 2005. And experts believe today's bomb also did not explode as intended.
The size of the device that was employed was quite significant, and had that device functioned in its intended and designed mode, we'd have seen considerable casualties, many people injured and probably many people killed.
The explosive may have been a compound called TATP. This footage from Brussels Airport and Metro shows the devastation when it detonates properly. More than 30 were killed. It's also thought to have been used in the Manchester Arena attack this year. That involved a suicide bomber. But today's attacker wanted to get away and used a timer. That's similar to Damon Smith, seen here leaving a time device at North Greenwich a year ago, which was spotted before it went off. Today, hundreds of counter-terrorism detectives have been deployed in this investigation. They've been forensically analysing this device, looking for fingerprints and DNA. They've also been scouring CCTV images, looking for an individual carrying this bag onto the tube and then getting off without it. That will have been the starting point for their manhunt. MI5 are helping the investigation. They will want to know if the individual was part of a group or acted alone, and, as often been the case recently, if they were previously known to the authorities.
Unfortunately, it would not be a surprise, and this concept of a lone wolf now would more accurately be described as a known wolf. Increasingly, attacks, when they happen, have been committed by individuals who were known in some way to either the counter-terrorism police or MI5 beforehand.
Officials here have reacted with irritation to this tweet from Donald Trump. Another attack in London by a loser terrorist, he said. These are sick and demented people who are in the sight of Scotland Yard. Must be proactive. Theresa May responded that it was never helpful to speculate about an ongoing investigation. For the 5th time this year, the country is dealing with the aftermath of a terrorist attack. And tonight, with no sign yet of an arrest, officials felt they had to raise the threat level. Amid fears the danger has not yet passed. Gordon Carrera, BBC News.
Well, you can keep up to date with the manhunt in London following the Parsons Green attack by going to our website, where there are also more eyewitness accounts and analysis. Just click onto the website, bbc.com/news, or download the BBC News app. Let's take a look now at some of the other stories making the news this hour. And hundreds of protesters have blocked the streets of the U.S. city of St. Louis in Missouri. They're protesting against the acquittal of former police officer Jason Stockley, who's white, for a murder charge following for the 2011 shooting of Anthony Lamar Smith, who was black. More than 500 protesters marched chanting "No justice, no peace," and some held Black Lives Matter signs. The Parliament of Iraq's autonomous Kurdish region has voted to go ahead with a controversial referendum on independence in 10 days' time. The country's central government in Baghdad, which is very much against any move that might lead to the Kurdish area breaking away, says the referendum is unconstitutional. The Prime Minister of Iceland has called a snap election after one of his two coalition partners left the government. Bjarni Benediktsson said that he'd preferred the election to be held in November, almost a year after the last snap vote, which was triggered by the Panama Papers scandal. The United Nations Security Council has again condemned North Korea for carrying out what it called a highly provocative missile test on Friday. However, there was no mention in the UN statement of any further sanctions. The North Korean leader, Kim Jong-un, has announced that his country's nuclear programs will continue despite sanctions in order to have an equilibrium with the United States. Bill Hayton reports.
North Korea is celebrating another successful test for its Hwasong-12 ballistic missile, and Kim Jong-un was there to congratulate the scientists. He told them his aim is to establish a balance of force with the United States, so it cannot threaten his country with military action. But on a visit to an airbase near Washington, President Trump said the US will never be intimidated.
After seeing your capabilities and commitment here today, I am more confident than ever that our options in addressing this threat are both effective and overwhelming. Thank you.
In New York, the UN Security Council discussed the situation for the second time this week. This time there was no new resolution, only a press statement strongly condemning the missile launch and urging compliance with existing sanctions. And Russia says the US has to get serious about talks with North Korea.
We called on our US partners and others to implement political and diplomatic solutions that are provided for in the resolution. And without implementing this, we also will consider it as a non-compliance with the resolution, non-fully implementing the resolution.
But as Russia and China urge patience, the US says it's running out of time. It wants an end to North Korea's missile and nuclear programs. But with those programs making rapid progress, the choices facing world leaders are becoming more difficult. Bill Hayton, BBC News.
Well, still to come on BBC News. The world's first museum dedicated to street art opens its doors this weekend in Berlin, and we take a look inside.
Freedom itself was attacked this morning, and freedom will be defended. The United States will hunt down and punish those responsible.
Bishop Tutu now becomes spiritual leader of 100,000 Anglicans here, of the blacks in Soweto Township as well as the whites in their rich suburbs.
We say to you today, in a loud and a clear voice, enough of blood and tears. Enough!
The difficult decision we reached together was one that required great and exceptional courage.
It's an exodus of up to 60,000 people caused by the uneven pace of political change in Eastern Europe.
I am free!
This is BBC News, and these are the latest headlines. The terror threat level in the UK is raised after an explosion hits a morning rush hour commuter train in London. And North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un says his country will meet its nuclear ambitions despite sanctions after the UN strongly condemns Friday's missile test. United Nations human rights experts are extremely worried about the arrest of an Egyptian lawyer who was detained as he was about to fly to Switzerland to meet them. The lawyer, Ibrahim Metwali, was due to speak at the UN Working Group on Enforced Disappearances about cases including that of Giulia Regeni, the Italian doctoral student who was tortured to death in Egypt. From Cairo, Orla Guerin reports.
Lawyer Ibrahim Metwali, who dared to fight for Egypt's disappeared, including his eldest son, Amer. Last Sunday at Cairo airport, he disappeared himself. He wound up here at the high-security Tora prison complex instead of addressing UN experts in Geneva. Now the lawyer is facing charges of illegally founding an organisation for families of the disappeared.
My dad,
His younger son, Abdul Munim, also a campaigner, told me he knew the risks, but he wanted to speak for the disappeared, like the murdered Italian Giulia Regeni.
My father actually expected that he might be stopped at the airport, but he chose not to let fear control him. He took the risk to bring the voice of the victims to the UN and the entire world.
Your brother has disappeared. Your father is now behind bars. Are you worried that you could be next?
I'm living with this fear. It's difficult, but history will remember that I did something.
Human rights groups say as many as 1,300 people have disappeared off the streets in Egypt over the past 2 years, taken by the military or national security agencies. They say most reappear weeks or months later in custody, having been tortured. Last year, the Italian researcher Giulia Regeni was tortured to death after he vanished in Cairo. Egyptian authorities denied involvement, but Rome recalled its ambassador. Though there has been no justice for Regeni, a new Italian ambassador has just arrived here. Human rights campaigners say that sends the wrong message to the Egyptian government.
It has already emboldened them just by announcing that the ambassador of Italy will come back to Egypt. We had our website blocked. We had Ibrahim Metwali being arrested, and more the government feels entitled to do whatever it wants.
How serious could the consequences be?
I think the plan for the government is to silence anybody who speaks out on enforced disappearances.
We asked Egypt's Interior Ministry for an interview or a comment about forced disappearances. It didn't respond. But in the past, the ministry has said there is no such thing in Egypt, not a single case. And any allegations about this are part of a propaganda campaign against the government. Orla Guerin, BBC News, Cairo.
Now, after 20 years in space, the Cassini mission to Saturn has come to a spectacular end. The probe had run out of fuel and the US space agency NASA had commanded it destroy itself by plunging into the planet's atmosphere. Our science editor David Shukman has more.
It's been a journey that sounds like something from science fiction. NASA conjuring up animations of the Cassini spacecraft flying around the spectacular rings of Saturn. But this really did happen, and these are some of the images the mission actually captured. The planet seen from closer than ever before. The strange detail of its rings. A jet stream in the shape of a hexagon. And an utterly weird collection of moons. But today, the expedition had to come to an end.
I'm going to call this the end of mission.
At Mission Control in California, hugs and applause. For many, it's been the work of a lifetime. And no surprise, there were very mixed feelings as the final signal reached Earth.
Well, it's been a part of my life for 20 years. We've spent day in and day out thinking about Cassini, planning the observations, focusing on the science. My career has been based on Cassini, so it's really hard to see that go.
Saturn is the most distant world to have been explored for so long, and the Cassini spacecraft, which is almost as big as a bus, has achieved something never attempted before. It's given us unprecedented views, and these have led to dozens of discoveries. The mission is described as one of the most remarkable journeys of exploration, while it's been orbiting Saturn for a staggering 13 years. Now, it's one of Saturn's moons, called Enceladus, that's produced the most startling revelation. Plumes of vapour were spotted blasting out of it. Now, this turned out to be water. So, let's take a closer look inside. Well, we now know that under a covering of ice, there's an ocean. And scientists have come to an amazing conclusion that in here, there's every ingredient needed for life. This opens up a whole new realm of possibilities in the search for life beyond Earth. And the discovery of conditions on moons like Enceladus is a real breakthrough for scientists like Linda Spilker, who started her career at NASA 3 decades ago when the mission began.
We want to know, is there life in Enceladus' ocean? Could there be oceans inside of other moons? It will take future missions to go back and answer those questions.
The mission captured these images of Saturn's moon Titan, and this is the sound the spacecraft recorded. To make sure Cassini didn't contaminate any of the worlds where there may be life, it was sent to its destruction. But it's raised some tantalising new questions. David Shruckman, BBC News.
A new museum dedicated to graffiti is opening its doors in Berlin on Saturday. Urban Nation is being described as the world's first street art museum. The BBC's Tim Allman has more.
In Berlin, they are posing a question. Is this art or a public eyesore? The German capital is famous, or notorious, depending on your point of view, for its graffiti. Now a museum has been set up devoted to this unique form of street art. Urban Nation will host the works of around 150 international and local artists, showcasing their dynamism and their variety.
Urban Contemporary Art ist die konsequente Fortsetzung, das, was auf der Straße passiert.
Urban Contemporary Art is the logical next step to follow what is happening on the street. I think this can be an archive aiming to tell a story for the first time, from the beginning to now. That's what we're trying to show here.
Of course, Berlin already has a venue for street art, a huge stretch of the wall that divided the city during the Cold War. The East Side Gallery, telling the country's story and becoming a memorial to peace. Graffiti art is hoping that where Berlin leads, others will follow.
I think it's a nice thing that there's a museum happening, because it means that the artists that have been a part of this scene and movement for a long time are now getting the respect that they deserved, and it's nice that it's looking back through the history and it's picking out different areas from it.
The first exhibition is called Art Mile, and fittingly enough, it will take place on the streets. Tim Allman, BBC News.
The world's top ballet dancers are gathering in the 2017 UK City of Culture, Hull, for a special gala performance on Saturday. The principal dancer of Russia's prestigious Mariinsky Ballet, the head of the Royal Ballet and the principal of the English National Ballet will be there. They all followed similar paths to stardom, beginning their careers at a small dance school in Hull, as our arts correspondent David Sillito reports.
I think it's a very special day for Hull and for the dance world.
Nice to be back here.
How long since you last danced in Hull?
It must have been when I was a little kid, before I went to the Royal Ballet School, I think.
This is a story of ballet and an extraordinary homecoming. Our young ballerinas here are following in some extraordinary steps. Joseph Cayley is now a principal dancer with English National Ballet.
And it's not just Joseph. The Royal Ballet's Demelza Parish, Elizabeth Harrod, the artistic director, even the choreographer. They all started out here.
Right leg,
Left leg.
I went to Skelton Hooper in Hull.
Left leg.
And that's when I started to do ballet.
Rise on your tiptoes.
It kind of has, you know, these pink walls and brick.
So many successful ballet stars began here in this little side street in Hull with Vanessa Hooper.
Hi, darling, remember this?
Xander Parrish was just 8 when he first arrived. He's now the first ever British principal of Russia's Mariinsky.
I simply can't believe it. I get to see all my beautiful babies.
All back together again.
All grown up, dancing together.
When you stand on that stage, what are your feelings going to be?
I think my heart will probably burst with pride. And there'll probably be tears running down my face. I just feel so grateful that I've had the opportunity, that they've had the opportunity, and that we can share it together.
30 years since you were last here?
Certainly, yes.
And this is Kevin O'Hare, the head of the Royal Ballet, another former student. And this is his grand gala. A celebration of ballet and all that began here. David Sillito, BBC News, Hull.
This year's City of Culture. That's it for the moment. Stay with us. We've got the headlines coming up shortly, but as I mentioned, there's plenty more on the BBC News website.
Hello. After several days of quite cool, showery weather, only subtle changes taking place this weekend. There will be fewer showers around by the time we get to Sunday. Throughout the weekend, occasional sunshine. In it feels quite pleasant. In the showers, it feels quite cold. Some quite chilly nights around as well, with perhaps even a touch of frost in a few places. It is chilly because we're in a flow of air from the north, high pressure to the west of us, low pressure to the east. The air coming down from the north around these pressure systems, and it's unstable air with the showers. And from the word go in the morning, a few of those showers for northern and western parts of Wales, Cornwall, Devon, a few near these North Sea coasts and to northern Scotland as well. But away from the showery areas, and most of us will be away from the showery areas, we're likely to start the day with some pleasant sunshine, just some areas of cloud here and there. But where you've been clear for any period of time overnight, it will be a chilly start, so temperatures only gradually recovering as we go through the morning. It's still on the breezy side. You'll certainly notice that across northern Scotland, and here we're getting a fair few showers coming in on that stiff breeze. So on through the day then, where you start with some sunshine, the clouds going to build, there'll be a threat of a shower. Where you start cloudy, you may well see the sunshine come out for a time, but there's still a threat of a shower. And it could be we see a longer spell of rain moving through parts of western Scotland and into Northern Ireland. The showers get going elsewhere. There could be some heavy downpours around, especially across some eastern parts of England. That could come with a rumble of thunder, but everywhere at risk of getting at least one shower moving through that may be heavy. Temperatures into the mid-teens. Now, as we go on through into the evening, the chance again for another spell of rain, this time affecting parts of Wales, southwest England, and even overnight, Saturday night into Sunday, there could be some heavy rain for some into southwest England, maybe around Lyme Bay, heavy showers close to the south coast, whereas many other places will become dry. And it's going to be much cooler in rural spots compared with town city centres, and some, maybe in Scotland, maybe in Northern Ireland too, will get close to freezing for a touch of frost as Sunday begins. Maybe one or two mist and fog patches because there are lighter winds part 2 of the weekend on Sunday as high pressure starts to nudge in. Looks like it'll give mainly dry weather to Scotland, Northern Ireland, variable cloud and sunny spells. Wales, Western England will see relatively few showers, but elsewhere across England a scattering of showers that could still be on the heavy side, but by no means everybody will get one. And with lighter winds, more of us staying dry, seeing some occasional sunshine, it'll feel a little bit warmer by the time we get to Sunday. For Monday and Tuesday, it's all looking pretty quiet. Not many showers at all, quite a bit of cloud, a little bit of sunshine.
A book can lead us to new worlds and experiences. But how can the words take us back to the ideas that brought it into being? How can the book guide us to the one who gave it shape and character? How can it show us the inspiration? Learn more about the book